Right, let's stay with that story now and be joined by political analyst Professor Dirk Kotze, who joins us now via Zoom. Prof, thank you so much for making time. Everybody is turning their backs on Mr. Makwarela. They're basically saying he made his bed, let him lay in it.
Yes, that is indeed so. And I think there's so many layers where we will have to account for this now. Well, first of all in the council, then also with the IEC, as well as COPE as a political party must also account for it, despite the explanation we've heard now. Because when he was nominated as a candidate in 2021, he had to state up front that he qualifies in all respects as a candidate, and that, for example, he's not insolvent. That's one of the requirements of any candidate at both national as well as provincial and local level. So this is a huge embarrassment, firstly for him, but also for COPE as a political party.
And let's talk about COPE as a political party. I mean, you would argue this is a party that's literally on its way out. If you look at the diminishing numbers in terms of support every time we go to elections, is this the final nail on the coffin for the Congress of the People?
Well, they have still one other very prominent person, and that's the Speaker in Johannesburg, Murunwa Makwarela. We also know that when she was elected, there was differences of opinion. There was sort of factions within COPE, whether she qualifies as a candidate of COPE or not. So it's the history of COPE that we all are very much aware of after their formation in 2007, and the leadership struggles to a large extent in some other way continued. So we are seeing, as a result of that, we are seeing now this inability of the party to really be able to manage their own members. And in this case, the fact that, for example, Dr. Makwarela also moved over from the coalition of which COPE was part of, led by the DA, to the ANC one, already begged some questions of who decided on this. Was that a personal decision by him because of his position as Speaker in Tshwane, or was it a decision by the party itself to make a sort of a strategic change in their position? And that again will now be answered, I would say, or will become an issue in early next week when a new Speaker and then a new mayor must be elected, because it will. The position of COPE and on which side it will be in this election will become quite a critical matter.
Yeah. There are people who suggested after Makwarela was elected as mayor that this is going to shine the spotlight on COPE and gives the organization an opportunity to really re-emerge and constantly be in the public narrative, seeing that their own candidate would be mayor. But when you look at what's just happened now, what impact do you think this is going to have on the organization as we head to the elections in 2024? It's not like they received an overwhelming number of votes in Tshwane. I mean, Makwarela was the only council member representing COPE in the city council. Even as William Adisha and Dennis Bloom were speaking, Prof, you're wondering which faction of COPE are they speaking for? Because the last time they were busy suspending the leader of COPE, whom 2 days later came back and suspended them.
Yes, that is what I refer to. And I think what we have seen now is another major setback for COPE. And I think, based on this and the fact that it creates so much questions about integrity of key members of them, about public credibility, I don't think it does anything good for them for next year's election. And I think, therefore, from a provincial or national point of view, it is possibly one of the last sort of news items that we are seeing now is still something about COPE. I think COPE will, to a large extent, as a party, vanish over time, especially after next year's election.
Yeah, I mean, COPE has been struggling to cope, Prof, over the last couple of years, and one wonders how it's going to cope in the next elections. Let's talk about on Monday, when the council sits, what should be the approach of the various political parties? When I spoke to the ANC in Tshwane earlier, they seemed to be confident that their councillors are properly vetted. The IEC has been saying this week that that responsibility to do background check on councillors lies with, one, the political parties themselves, two, the city manager with the support of COGTA. So what should be the approach of political parties as they prepare to put forward whichever candidate they will want to support for the position of Speaker and subsequently the position of Mayor?
Well, I think first of all the parties who will nominate candidates will have to make double sure, which means that they will have to go to these individual candidates and that they upfront state that they qualify in all respects as a candidate, that there's no form of disqualification, because ultimately they have to believe in their candidates. And where it's possible to do documentary checks, that they do that before the election. I think this weekend is going to be the time for the parties to prepare their nominations, and that will give them some time to do these background checks. But I think in that respect, it is also important that that it applies to, first of all, the candidates, but that over time, all the parties actually go back to their representatives in the different councils, in this case now the Tshwane Council, and that parties make double sure that their representatives are indeed qualifying as candidates. I think it also goes back to the IEC, because the responsibility is ultimately the IEC's one. They can delegate it, as you explained, but ultimately it is an IEC responsibility.
Yeah, when I spoke to the IEC this week, they said that the Constitution doesn't require them to do that kind of a background check. And maybe, Prof, the conversation should be, how do we strengthen the legislation so that it's very clear and it's constitutionally prescribed that the IEC must also take up that responsibility and not only leave it up with political parties and municipal managers, especially now that we've seen this particular case. How does what has happened now, Prof, change the dynamics in the City Council? Because the ANC and the EFF supporting Mr. Makwarela were able to get him to be elected as mayor and garner those numbers because of the trust, I suppose, that they have amongst each other. Does this mean that the multi-party coalition that was being led by the DA now is going to be firmly in control?
I think they do have definitely a chance to reclaim the position of mayor. That obviously depends on what COPE is going to do, if they will stay with the ANC group or whether they will return to the DA-led, or they don't like this word, but the DA group, the original coalition, and to what extent they were able to identify or to be able to consolidate those 6 or 7 votes that came from within either the DA or Action SA, or both of them. But I think to a large extent they might have achieved that. If they have done these 2 steps, then they do have a majority in the council, a very slim majority of 1 or 2 votes, and that will be able to deliver first of all the speaker to them, and then thereafter also the mayor. But the election of the speaker is going to be the test. Yeah. If they are successful with the speaker, then the election of the mayor will almost automatically follow on that.
Service delivery is going to be hugely affected, Prof. There's an adjustment budget that was due to be approved by the Metro at the end of last month. But because there was no executive council, there was no mayoral committee, that couldn't be approved. It's a budget that gives the Metro that opportunity to not only review the revenue, but expenditure estimates as well. So the Metro now finds itself in a very serious predicament. How urgent is it that the city needs to go back to stability? Because if Monday's council sitting doesn't do what it's supposed to do, where the speaker is elected, and then subsequently there's a mayor that's elected, we're really going to be in trouble in the city of Tshwane, and service delivery is going to be affected. Because my understanding, and I think Selby Bukaba confirmed, that if that adjustment budget is not approved anytime soon, that's going to have an impact on that service delivery.
Yes, that is indeed so. And it is that they received some reprieve from the Treasury in order to submit it later on. As you say, it was supposed to be approved on the 28th of February. Now they have a few weeks in order to do it. But it is exceptionally important that they do approve this budget, because this budget is necessary in order to take them to the end of the financial year, in the middle of the year, around about June, July. At the same time, we know that in the reports by the Auditor General, the financial situation in Tswane hasn't been good at all. We know about the outstanding money that must be paid to Eskom, as well as a lot of service delivery matters that need some extra funding. So this is absolutely essential that that first of all, these elections are taking place as soon as possible this coming week, and that they stabilize the situation, and then that a number of other financially related reports are also approved by the Council in order to be able to comply with the requirements for that budget.
Yeah, Prof, let's hope that these politicians are not going to be bickering in the City Council on Monday, but they'll get to appreciate the urgency of a speaker being elected so that services are not affected. Thank you for making time for us,